This straight eye, we'll show you when we put it in the vise. Straight eye Daihatchi 1260 with a, I believe it's a 1/8 inch hot orange bead. Oops. And thread color really doesn't matter. I use chartreuse because it, when you finish tying this pattern, a little bit of the thread will show behind the bead. And it just adds that little extra hot spot. I don't know if it makes a difference to the fish. So usually I pinch off about 1 inch of marabou. So basically that's kind of what it looks like. And how you do this next step is totally up to you. A lot of guys don't like to tear it. They would prefer to have the fibers at the end still attached. Because some people think it makes it flow better. But I think if you just use marabou with the real fluffy fibers instead of the stringy stuff, it works great. So basically you trim up your ends, and you want to fill part of the bead with the marabou. So what I'm doing is I'm holding the tips of the marabou just behind the eye over top of the bead. And then you're going to put your first wrap right behind the bead. And then you're going to wrap into the bead. And it helps to fill up that hole. You can also do it with dubbing when you're wrapping the body. And because I use longer tails, I like to go back quite a ways to right before the bend starts, and then put a couple wraps underneath the marabou just to help hold it up. Then the tail's about the length of the shank. Nice long tail, flows way better in the water. And then you take your orange grizzly hackle and you, holding the shiny side out, you strip the left-hand side. So you're only going to have barbels on the one side of the stem. So then you tie it in right in front of the tail. Make sure that the hackle is lashed down really good. Nothing worse than hackle coming apart when just as you're ready to wrap it. And the dubbing I use is just straight hairline rabbit dubbing. And then I use a coffee grinder and I'll mix in, what I've mixed in with this is olive ice dub. Just take a pinch of olive ice dub and chop it up to so it's about the same length as the fibers of the rabbit dubbing. And it gives you a nice subtle flash.
What colors are those that you're using?
It's olive.
They're all olive?
Yeah. Yeah, it's olive rabbit dubbing and olive ice dub. It's way easier to dub if you just use very small amounts at a time. You can always add more dubbing later if you need to. Now, can I do this with out, hitting the camera. Barely. There's been a lot of questions about why I don't counter rivet with wire. I was saying to a couple fellows earlier that I messed around with this pattern for about 2 years before I actually started tying it commercially. And I found the variation that worked best was without a wire rib. Now, if you're worried about breaking your hackle stem, then you can counter rib it with like 2-pound mono or whatever you like. But I put the body on a little bit thicker, and when I'm wrapping the hackle up, I tend to pull it down into the dubbing a bit. So basically, the perfect Pumpkinhead for me has 4 wraps up the body, and then about 3 wraps right at the head. And if you like to troll flies, which is unfortunately what this pattern was designed for, I would put less wraps at the head. Otherwise, you'll find that your fly will tend to spin in the water. And just make sure it's tied off really good behind that bead. Sometimes I go back and forth in front of the stem, behind the stem. Do it 3 or 4 times just to make sure it's anchored well. Then you can always put a very minute amount of dubbing on. And you can wrap that again, which helps to secure it even further. And then just a matter of whip finishing. And that's it.